In this lesson, we're going to create the pistons for the mechanisms of the landing gear. Alright, so in the last lesson we had created the landing gear arm, and now what we need to do is create the actual piston that will draw that up. So let's go ahead and create some sort of axle in which the piston can grab a hold of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the shape of this this mount here a little bit, just to give myself a little bit of room to create an axle for the pistons to grab a hold of. So I'm going to go ahead and go to edge mode, and I'm going to select these three edges right here. Now if you can't see those, turn off Turbo Smooth, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about here. And let's grab all of those, and I'm just going to pull those forward just to kind of give it this sort of shape. Turn on Turbo Smooth and you can see exactly what that creates here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and create the piston, or the axle on which this is going to rest. So I'm going to go to my front view, and we're going to go to cylinder, and we can use auto grid to create the cylinder right on this surface. And I'm going to pull that out, and you'll see here that it kind of draws out in a different direction, and that's because of that auto grid. Let's go ahead and recreate it on a flatter surface here, and that should work a little bit better. But again, we're still getting that that skew there. So this is something to watch out for whenever using auto grid. So let's just create a cylinder without that, and we'll use F3 if we need to be able to see that. And I forgot to turn off auto grid. Here, let's try that again. There we go. Now we can hit F3 to see exactly the size that we need, and we'll drag that up and finalize that. Let's hit F3 to go back to our shaded view. And what we want is we want an axle that will go all the way through. Type in 0.5 on our radius, and we'll take our height up. Let's drag that through here so we can see that. And it looks like if we go up to about 5, that would give us a good amount to work with there. So I think that's going to be pretty good. Now really quickly, let's go ahead and convert this over to editable poly, and let's adjust the topology that's going to be on the front side. So I'm going to go to vertex mode, and we're going to use cut, and we'll cut from top to bottom here, and then left to right. And we'll do the same thing on this side. Okay, and then remember, always check your vertices just to make sure that you don't have any that are overlapping. So views, X view, overlapping vertices, update, and it looks like we're good, so we don't have to worry about that. You can click on this again and uncheck overlapping vertices to get rid of that UI. Okay, so now that we have this, let's go ahead and let's start working on the actual pistons that are going to connect to this. So I'm going to just take this cylinder, and I'm going to make a copy of it. I'm going to hold shift and drag that up in the Z direction. I'm going to hit OK, and then we'll rotate that 90 degrees to where it's pointing straight up. Now if you don't have your snapping on, that will not snap perfectly to 90 degrees, so you'll want to retry that and with the angle snapping on. Let's go to our front view, and I'm going to go ahead and rotate this about 20 degrees, and I'm going to pull this down into position. So I'm going to hit F3 really quickly, and I just want to rest that pretty much to where that bottom line is right along the center of this axle here. So something like that. And then I'm going to grab my vertex mode, select these vertices on the end, and I'm going to drag those straight out. Now you'll see that my move tool will allow me to drag it straight up, but that's going to cause some skewing. So if I change my reference coordinate system from view to local, that should give me the proper direction. Now if vertex mode will not work in that way, let's go back to local here. Try polygon mode. That usually does a better job. So if I select these polygons here, and I go to front view, you'll see that that will allow me to pull straight out. So sometimes if that doesn't work, just try a different subobject mode. Alright, so now that I have this let's go to edge mode. Let's select all of these edges in the center of that new cylinder we just created, and let's use connect. I'm going to create the pistons, which are going to be up here. So what I want to do is I want to slide this up a little bit. We'll go to something around 16, and we'll hit OK. We're going to go to polygon mode, hit F4 on the keyboard to do that, and then we'll select these polygons right here, and we're going to extrude those out, but we want to extrude those in the local normal. Pull that back down there. We'll go to something around 0.4. Hit OK. And then I want to bevel this edge here, so we can go to edge mode by hitting 2. Let's double click on this edge to select that loop, and then we'll use chamfer. Take your chamfer amount down to something around 0.1, and I'll do 0.15 and hit OK. So here we have that piston started. Now you'll notice that this doesn't go all the way up into our object, and that's okay. However, I would probably do want that to go up just a little bit more, so it's hidden a little bit better. So let's go to polygon mode and select just this polygon on the top. Okay, so let's select all of these. Go to our front view, and let's just pull that up. Let's hit F3 so we can see our wireframe. And this should be good. We don't have to go all the way up to the top, but we don't want it to be absolutely noticeable that this is not connected to anything. Now, our camera shot is not going to show this, so you don't have to make these pieces actually connect to anything. That's getting a little bit too technical, and it might be wasted time. Alright, so now that we have this piston started, let's go ahead and let's move this into position. And I'm going to bevel this end down here. So I'm going to hit Alt-Q. Let's zoom in on that. And let's go to polygon mode. Or I'm sorry, edge mode. Let's select this loop all the way around. Okay. And now that we have all of those edges selected, let's chamfer those to something along that line. Let's hit Alt-Q. And that's just going to help it kind of fit in there a little bit better. Alright, so let's go ahead and separate this part with the rest of this, okay, just in case the animator needs that. So we're going to select all these polygons in this part of the piston, and we're going to use detach. Okay, so let's find detach here. Let's give it a new name, so we're going to call this piston underscore shaft. And then this object here we'll call piston hydraulic. I'm not sure if I'm spelling that correctly, but you get the idea. And then this one we're going to call piston axle. Just keep things nice and neat there. Alright, so now we need to apply Turbo Smooth to all of these. So I'm just going to apply a Turbo Smooth to all of them, and that will instance this modifier. Isoline display. And then we'll come in individually and tighten up some of those details. So let's go to edge mode, let's select these. So we have that ring selected. Let's do connect. And I'm just going to draw that down to where that's nice and tight there. Okay, a little more rounded. Hit OK. Now you'll notice here at the top that that gets pretty round. But if you'll remember, we can delete these polygons here across the top, and we won't have to worry about setting up that roundness. So let's just hit delete, and you'll see how that tightens up there. Okay. Let's go to this object. Let's do the same thing. Let's select these edges across the middle. We'll use connect. And I'm going to slide that up to something around 98 or so. And then let's look at the bottom here. Let's do the same thing here. So connect, and let's make sure we have these edges selected here. Connect, and we'll slide that down. Hit OK. And then finally we need to do the axle here. So let's go to edge mode. And we're going to select these edges. So hold Shift to select that ring. We'll do connect. And we're going to do 2 segments here. And I'm going to pinch this apart, and you'll see that those segments get closer to that end there. And then we'll hit OK. And we should be good. So now we're ready to go ahead and create a copy of both of these. Hold Shift and clone those to the other side. And now those are in place. So we can select all of those, and we can apply that black color and our gray material. Okay, so now we have our piston, we have the arm ready, and now what we need to do is we need to go ahead and copy all of this over to this side. So let's select all of those pieces, minus the landing gear, so hold Alt to deselect that. And then we're going to hold Shift, and we're going to drag that forward in the X. Now this is much too big for our front landing gear. So what we're going to do is we're going to scale it down. Now if I go ahead and I scale all these in all 3 directions, everything should scale properly. Let's go ahead and grab our Move tool. Just drop that down. And one thing that I just noticed is that we did not grab this part here. Okay, so we want to make sure that we get that. So I'm going to hit Control Z a couple of times, and we're going to recopy that all together. It's just going to make things a little bit easier. Hold Shift and clone. Hit OK. Scale in all 3 directions. Grab your Move tool by hitting W and drag that down into position. And that should be pretty close there. Now you're going to notice a couple of issues. We're going to have to reshape some of this because it's just too big. So we're going to go ahead and scale it down even further, and I'm going to move this down. Now you'll notice that this is not fitting the landing gear anymore. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to modify the landing gear a little bit to actually fit this. Okay. So now that I have that in there, not much is sticking through. We can always modify that if needed. And if I want, I can convert this to editable poly, grab that edge that's sticking through right there, and just push that down on the Z. Okay, so now we're no longer poking through there. Okay. Alright, so now that we have this set up, let's go ahead and modify the landing gear. Let's go to modify our editable poly and polygon mode. Let's select all of these. And I'm missing one edge right down here on the bottom, so I'm going to hit grow one time, and that should allow me to have all of those that I need. Let's scale this in the Y just to make that thinner. And now that fits just fine. Okay, so now we have our landing gear ready to go. And the last thing that we need to do for this is we need to get our wings in the proper position. So you'll see that they're kind of straight out, but the design called for the wings to be kind of at an angle. So we're going to modify the air intake objects here and bring the wings and all of those pieces down to give it kind of a slanted look here. And we'll go ahead and we'll talk about how to modify objects after they've been built in the next lesson.